Before the season, talking ACC basketball, and in a bunch of different ways, I said this season looks like Duke, UNC, Gap, the rest of the league. I thought those were going to be the kind of pillars on which everything was built. UNC hasn't been there. Duke has. Surprisingly, Pitt's stepped up. Clemson's stepped up a little bit.
I thought there were going to be tournament teams going into the year, but not like Duke, Gap, Pitt, Clemson, Gap.
If you look at, it's very true. That is exactly how it is. Duke, Gap, those two. If you look at Duke and Pitt, and you kind of cover up the eye test, which is in favor of Duke, they're kind of similar. Duke is 12-2, with their only losses being to the current 6th-ranked team in Kentucky and the current 22nd-ranked team in Kansas. Pitt is 12-2. Their only losses to the current 14th-ranked team in Mississippi State and Wisconsin, who's also receiving votes now, but at the time was number 19. So, they neither have a bad loss. They're both looking like tournament teams. Pitt is also not ranked at the moment, although if you take the also receiving votes category, they are the most also receiving votes, so you could say they're ranked 26th in the top 25. I'm a big fan of Jeff Capel as a coach. We don't talk with him often, obviously being the Pitt coach, but we do at ACC Tip-Off. And every time he walks away from our table, I look at Dennis and I go, I think I would, if I were a top recruit, I wouldn't mind committing to that guy. It just seems like he connects well. The other thing he does well over the last 2 years is he draws up two-headed monster offenses. Last year it was Blake Hinson, who's a stretch big man, shot the three a bunch, and Bub Carrington, who was a freshman and ended up in the lottery of the NBA draft. Was not that type of player coming into the year. He was a fringe top 100 recruit. Left as one of the top 14 players in the NBA draft. They have to replace both of them. Came in with Ish Leggett and Jalen Lowe. They're both averaging roughly 17.5 points per game. So they're tough to stop for the simple fact of if you put your best defender on one, the other can go off and vice versa. Duke is still favored by 14.5. If you made me choose between Pitt and Clemson, which is in that second tier that Dennis brought up, it's Duke, Gap, Pitt and Clemson, Gap, everyone else. If you made me pick one out of Pitt or Clemson, I'm taking Pitt just based on how they've played, which would put them as the second best team in the conference. Duke is favored by 14.5. That's going to be a conversation for the entire season. But on Duke's side, this is as good of a basketball challenge as you're going to get for the rest of the regular season. UNC, NC State, they provide some different challenges as far as emotion, environment. Certain road environments present different challenges. When you're Duke on the road, you have to tackle those. But from a basketball talent execution, how they've played up to this point, Pitt's played as well or better than everybody else in the conference. So this is as close as you're going to get to a fastball look. I did not expect to say that at the beginning of the year. I did not expect to have this one circled on my you got to watch it list, but here we are. It's why you don't play the games on paper. It's why you don't play the games with recruiting rankings and just count how many 4 and 5 stars you have.
Would it be better for the ACC to Pitt to win this game?
Probably.
Because that would boost their net ratings, and which would then in turn boost everyone else's? Yes.
I mean, that it is quite vital for the ACC that Pitt passes the eye test here.
Yeah.
You can't lose by 25. Because then you get put into the same bucket as the Virginia Techs of the world, who are not living up to expectations this year. And that can happen. Pitt has to, from the ACC's perspective, give Duke a sweat. So at least when Jay Billis is on the bracketologists at the end of the year, he can say, and they gave top 5 team in the country, Duke, a run for their money back in January. It is vital that they give a run. 14.5 points. I mean, you have to play. They're going to play to win the game. Let's not get carried away. Everybody in college basketball does. I'm setting like the success ranking at like 6.5. If you keep it within 3 buckets, right? 3 2-point buckets. If you keep it 6 or less in the final score, that's good for the ACC. I also, and this is where it gets kind of nonsensical, because if Duke plays their best brand of basketball, they'll win by a bunch. I do think they need sweats, right? They need reps late in games that are close. They need, because it's really one of the only things they haven't done well, is beat one-possession games late and not turn it over. It's really one of the few things they haven't done well. So if Pitt can give you a good sweat, if they can make it a two-possession game with 4 minutes left, you're not going to be happy with the basketball you played up until then. The first 36 minutes, you're not going to be jacked up about it if it's a two-possession game that late. But I think everybody on that team needs as many opportunities to show that they've improved and fixed the flaws in close late games. And that's not just limited to the freshmen. It's not just limited to players. I think Jon Scheyer needs as many reps as possible in those situations. Sometimes we forget that guy's still a young coach. And I'm not saying that Coach K doesn't empower his assistants, but I mean, he's calling the timeouts at the end of close games. It's
still just a third-year head coach.
He's not. Coach K wasn't looking around going, "What do you think, John? I'm confused here. Should I call a timeout?" It's, he had decades and decades and decades of gut instinct that Scheyer doesn't have yet. So there's two kind of storylines here. One is we get to find out, how legit Pitt is. Two is, could be one of the last few opportunities for Duke to really get their pulse going. And I'm not saying they'll be upset. They're not going to sweep through everything smooth. It's too many freshmen. There's too many nights in a row. I'm confident Duke will lose in the ACC somewhere. It's just, this is an opportunity for the other team to be the reason why you get the sweat, rather than you just show up flat and another team takes advantage of it. And that's not disrespectful to the rest of the ACC. It's just a fact. You watch the games, you look at the stats, you look at the advanced analytics, you look at the spreads. It is Duke, gap. Pitt, Clemson, gap, everybody else. Subject to be changed later if you do something worthwhile and worthy of moving you up and down.